What is up, everybody, and welcome to episode number 87 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Roscoe, and what a fun card we have coming for you guys tonight as we are covering the five stakes races for Canterbury Derby Day on Saturday. We love supporting the small tracks, and Canterbury Park has a really fun card this weekend. Again, headlined by the 3-year-old Canterbury Derby for $50,000, and with complementing with picks and ponies, as you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen below me, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, they're going to be covering Thistledown and their big day with Ohio Derby Day and the return of Catching Freedom. Just the small tracks get in the spotlight this weekend, and that's always great to see. Also, as you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen, please go down below the video player here on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Not only is it the best way to help out our channel and the easiest way, it is completely free to do. So please go down below, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and comment below who you think is going to win the Canterbury Derby Stakes. We love to hear your guys' opinions, and we read and respond to every single comment. So let's go right through the peripherals real quick here, and we will go right into it and try to not waste anyone's time. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor is where we post not only every single episode of Bettin N Boozin, but every single episode of the HHH Racing Podcast in audio form for more of an audio listener, whether you're listening to it in the car, at the gym, or wherever you're listening to it. Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor are the main three where we post. Please go rate, review, and subscribe over there. Guys, the Power Picks, congratulations to anyone that cashed last weekend in the Power Picks. It was my first time writing for the Power Picks, just outside of one of the big days where every single co-host does it. And we had 2 winners, 2 out of 3 spot play winners. So congratulations to that. Then again, one of them was Webslinger at 7-5, whatever he was. But winners are winners, of course. But obviously the scratches didn't help that price. But again, congratulations, you guys cashed along. And if you guys want to get in along with the rest of us, patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Only $4 a weekend, way over a positive ROI for over 3.5 years since February of 2021 when this was started. Oh, now we're at 623 total picks now. And guys, like I said, going strong, one of the most affordable and profitable tip sheets in all of YouTube. Patreon.com/HHH Racing Podcast. Again, the link is also in the description. And if you want to see any more previous editions of those Power Picks, or just want to learn more about us, HHHRacingPodcast.com is the place to do so. Guys, let's get through this, and let's bring on my co-host, and we'll go right into the racing sequence at Canterbury Park on Saturday. And we have a full house finally again for you guys tonight from the East Coast, New Jersey. Patrick Kunsel from Chicago right now, and Mr. South Beach himself, Charlie Freeman, and West Coast bias, and from the University of Kentucky, Noah Maher. Boys, full house again. What's going on?
Glad to be back.
Good to have everyone together.
Yeah, and like I said, we're all here. Charlie's in the garden. We're going for it all here. Anyway, guys, let's get right into it.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Like, I played golf today, and it was it was 85 degrees outside, so summer's definitely upon us. But guys, let's go right into this late pick 5, and shout out to anyone that own a part of Series F Crownsway Racing today. As Purse Thief took home the maiden special weight race 3 today at Churchill Downs. So congratulations to all the partners for a good friend of the podcast, Crownsway Racing, and of course one of my horses as well as Howard and Paul, I believe, also a part of that group. But race number 2, guys, is what starts all stakes races for Saturday at Canterbury Park, and it is a field of 8 for $40,000. It's the Curtis Samson Oaks handicap, and as you'll see our picks on the screen, we're all going with one horse, the number 1, Retired Kathy, a Minnesota bred in an open company field, as you guys see popping up on the screen right now. The morning line favorite at 5-2. Second choice being the number 5, Omega Miss, for Constantina Roman and Tony Granitz at 9-2. Third choice at 9-2. Second choice is the number 2, Tour Queen, for Luis Fuentes and I think it's Taylor Gate. I could be wrong on that one, but 4-1 is your second choice, and the third choice is number 5, Omega Miss. And you'll see, like I said, all of us are going with the morning line favorite. Pat, I'll go to you first and talk about why I like this horse so much. Timeform has this race listed as a fast pace. You'll see that's on the screen right now. See, it has the 2, 7, and 8 going out for the lead. Both the 1 and the 5 are far back, 1 being denoted with the most late pace through all these runners. But Pat, what'd you like most about the number 1 retired Kathy?
Yeah, I just think she's in, great form right now. Getting to her 3-year-old year, gets onto the turf. And she just seems to have hit her stride. Comes from Tampa and wins first time out at Canterbury. It was a Minnesota bred, so kind of hometown stuff. And, I just hope, she likes the inside draw because she's showed in the past. And I think she should sit a good trip in here along the rail. And, at 5-2, I don't know if we're going to get that considering we're 4 for 4 here. We usually change the odds. But,
yeah,
Charlie, if you have anything else to say about retired Kathy, I'm sure we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, no, honestly, I just think like you were exactly saying, obviously she still is fairly young, but, through these 9 races, you can kind of see when they were doing more of the sprint racing on the dirt, that was clearly not what she wanted. And then moving over to the turf and going to that mile distance at Tampa kind of seemed to be the sweet spot. And then obviously, as you touched on, the Minnesota horse returning home, going to Canterbury, obviously a little bit shorter, but got a nice pace set up and was able to roll by that field, albeit obviously 30 cents to the dollar. But I kind of just see the same thing happening here like Kyle was showing at the beginning. I think the pace just sets up well. As you touched on, Pat, the horse, she really seems to be coming into form now and is, obviously not making some big jump, but is still steadily progressing. And I just think between the setup and it being the right service and distance, I think this is the perfect spot for her.
I mean, Noah, there's just not that much going, at least in my eyes, in a lot of this other field. I mean, you have a horse coming in from Golden Gate, and then you have a horse coming over from the dirt from Prairie Meadows, then a Hawthorne runner that hasn't run on the turf in over a year. Omega Miss is probably the only one that's also has that really good turf running in this race. This almost just seems like it's retired Kathy, or it could be a lot of other horses. But she should get a pace set up, and as Charlie touched on, the distance should be right.
Yeah, it's the Moto obvious pick. I remember when you guys covered this last year, I think there were a couple horses that got bet heavily pretty late, and It seemed like that money was telling. So I wouldn't be surprised if this one's, maybe 8-5, 9-5 until they go into the gate and then takes a big hit. That might tell you if she's live or not. We've talked about it. It sets up for she probably could have won that state bred race by 6 or 7, but you can only beat who's in front of you. I got the 3 in second, who I find interesting that you've got as well, Kyle. This is kind of the connections I trust. I know Quinones and Padilla are Minnesota guys. They hit very well here at a decent clip. I think one that the last race, granted it was on the dirt, I think she just kind of inherited that lead. I mean, they went 25-1 and 50 flat. So I think there's another side to her. I think she can kind of sit off like she did in her second career start, because I think we all know it's going to be a pretty fast pace. I'm just kind of banking on these connections to think that the turf's going to suit her well, and I think she's interesting.
Yeah, and there is some turf breeding. I mean, there's not too much from the dam, but if you go back even farther, Such a Sweet Girl had won and was very good running on the turf down at Gulfstream, and throwback to Calder Racecourse back in 2011. So, turf breeding is there for this horse. It's just a matter of she can take to the turf. But with that 79, if she can replicate it on the turf, she could even vie for this lead. I mean, definitely vie for the lead, but vie for the win as well if she can carry over that 79. But we'll see as it comes through on Saturday. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think Padilla, he's not the biggest barn and doesn't win at the biggest clip, but Quinones and Padilla win at 23% total at Canterbury over the past year. So they always strike when they're together. And if this one's taking money, that could definitely be a good sign for the 3 Barb's dream come true. Noah and Patrick, Charlie Patrick, you guys both have the number 8 Extreme Smoke Show for McLean and Hugh Robertson. Fantastic Midwest connections course, training 2 Emmys to a lot of grade 1 victories, including the Arlington Million / Mr. D stakes of 21. This horse is working fast. Finally got out to that mile last time out, but this is another one that does have a little bit of turf breeding on the background. But again, you have to go a little bit farther back to look at it. But speed figures, Charlie, this one definitely suits it. Just going to have to take to the turf.
Yeah, I'd say the 2 reasons I didn't end up putting this one on top is obviously first turf, and then also just that there is so much speed. But I like that, despite the fact that I think she can show a lot of speed, is not a need for not a need the lead horse, and is also one that has actually won in a fast pace before. And then the other thing I kind of just keyed in on is, I mean, you look at the competition in the past, and this horse is repeatedly running in, anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 stakes racing.
Yep.
And you can kind of argue is in a class drop here. So I'm guessing, Pat, that was also part of your angle as well. I just think this is one who's ran against better and can maybe be one of the 4 replaced ones that won't end up dropping off right away. Some as the others. I just think maybe the one wraps them all up, but I think this one is a real chance.
Yeah, and you feel like I agree with everything you said. You just feel like Kyle said, with the connections, they're kind of bringing this horse to their home base to kind of reset themselves and see what they actually have with this horse. Because she was well meant early on. I mean, you don't win on debut. I know, break your maiden at Canterbury, and then you send the Keeneland and you win there in an optional claimer. So her 2024 year hasn't been too good, but let's hope she can round into form in this spot in a fun race.
Yeah, and Carmona actually just got rid of, I believe it's her bug this year, I think, at Canterbury. So she's now winning at 17%, has won 14 races, has gotten that weight break off of her. So she's definitely one. She rides for Robertson a lot at Canterbury. I went back and looked, did a little bit of research, and yeah, Carmona rides for Robertson a lot. So that doesn't necessarily concern me on that jockey switch either. Charlie, how about that? Eduardo Gallardo is winning at 29% out here. That's a guy who ran at Arlington and Hawthorne for a long time, just didn't get that good of stock. And man, has he really flourished at Canterbury so far this year. Omega Miss is a horse that Pat and I both have in third. I mean, might be a part of that pace scenario, but we'll have to see. Tony Granite's fantastic Midwest trainer, trains a lot at Hawthorne, has won a bunch this year. 1 for 1 at Canterbury. Won at Tampa in a 16 claimer, and by but with a good setup, but by daylight, then takes up to Canterbury, throws her an allowance race, and never looked like a loser in that race. I mean, granted, they went slow, kind of inherited the lead as we talked about before, and like I said, never looked like a loser. Pat, this is one that just seems like she's going to have to improve, I think, a little bit, but if she gets a nice little stalking trip, could get run on a lot of first run on a lot of others.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you first glance at the PPs, you see like, oh, she wired the field. Let's see what this race looked like. She was as confident as hell in that race. You hit on the head. I think she's got more in her. She's going to have to improve, like you said. And, I think we should get a square price on her too. So I'm definitely going to try and play her underneath in some exactas and maybe a little bit on top, because I think she's got something there too. I
completely agree with you. Wouldn't disagree with anything you said. Last horse, Charlie, we'll touch on real quick is Tour Queen, the horse coming over from Golden Gate. Previous new trainer, like I said, new look, never been outside of Golden Gate. This is one that's going to be a part of that pace scenario, but you think she can hold on at least for a little bit of a piece?
Yeah, I think she's been in hot paces before, and obviously won on debut in a hot pace. Obviously, it's a little concerning that West Coast bias doesn't have the horse anywhere. I will say personally, 4-1 was a bit shocking to me on the morning line. I think you'll get a lot more than that, because this is one I would strictly only use underneath. I'd take the 8 at 5-1 over this one any day. But I just like, as you touched on, I think the trainer switch is a bit interesting. This is one who, I don't know too much about the trainer, admittedly, but he hasn't ran often, but already is a winner in one of his 4 efforts here. And this is one that's been repeatedly running an optional claiming 50,000. But, before that, ran in some stakes races, like similar to this level, a little more expensive, and, ran decent in the 1-2 back. And again, just trying to take the angle where they're just trying to figure out what to do with this horse. The 2 mile turf efforts haven't been bad. And especially the 1, 2 back was in a hot pace, and the horse still held the whole time. So I just thought this was another one of the speed ones, similar to the 8, who has at least shown the ability to hold that speed and could maybe, hang on for a minor place.
And that one was at a mile too. She's run a lot at 6 furlongs, and that one was a mile on the turf. So definitely one, if that she gets part of that pace scenario might be the speed of the speed per se to hold on through the entire race. I'm going 1-3-5. Pat's going 1-8-5. Charlie's going 1-8-2, and Noah's going 1-3-4. Guys, let's switch on to race number 3, which is the Lady Canterbury Stakes. And as I'll bring up the Equibase right now, it goes at 1 mile on the turf. Fillies and Mares 3 years old and up. Draws a field of 7. Morning line favorite being the number 4, Midnight Current, Eduardo Gallardo for Joel Burnt. Second choice, the number 5, Scent of Success, coming off a really nice win for Carmona and Robertson again. Third choice would being the number 7, Thunder's Rock and Roll for Alonso Quinones and John G. Arnett. Very good Midwest connections in this race, just with those 3 that I said. And you'll see, again, guys, this is just like last week with we're either going to be really right or really wrong early. Last week we were really right, so hopefully we can be really right again. We're all going again with the morning line favorite, but this one is deservedly so. And Noah, I'll let you talk first since you talked last about the one last time out. Midnight Current ran in a race with a lot of horses that are coming out of a previous race into this one, won by the number 5, Sense of Success. But you want to talk about a pace or a completely different setup of race and benefiting from a pace scenario and track position. It's definitely this race. I'll play this for starting from the top of the last turn, Noah, and I'll have you talk through it. But like I said, what'd you like most about Midnight Current? If you watched this race at all, what'd you notice going into here?
Yeah, I mean, before this race, she was kind of one of the really good mares out there at Canterbury. I mean, this is just kind of where she's based. She's 10 for 19 lifetime. Sorry, I just lost my. She had been off since September. I just feel like it was probably just to get one into her. Frankly, I actually don't remember what number she is in this race. I know I watched it.
So the 7 is the Sense of Success right here. You see going to the lead. The 4 is Midnight Current. She was 3 wide on the far turn. Just never really was able to get going. Sense of Success saved ground the entire way. Was able to kick on late. Obviously, you did it very impressively. And the 5 and the 1 are both in this race as well. The 5, Big Bad Diva, and the number 1, Golden Gopher, are also in this race. So 4 coming out of this one. Midnight Current was just really wide, Charlie. I mean, like you said to me, off the layoff, being that wide, granted, was 2 to 5 in that race, so maybe should have done better than 4.5 lengths. But I think I like the inside post. Gallardo hops back up a border, and now second off the layoff should be ready to fire again.
Yeah, and I mean, also none of us touched on, but obviously the turf wasn't firm, which is what, she'd been used to for all those races prior. As we all already had touched on, was first time off that big layoff. I also just think the 5 who's in this race, that was the 7 in the replay, just honestly got a dream trip. Obviously I have the 5 in second, which I'll go into in a moment, who I think is obviously decent, but I just think like everybody's kind of said, I think it just wasn't an ideal trip for Midnight Current. Again, probably just needed one. Obviously the bettors thought she didn't need one and would be ready straight away, but I think second time out, getting a little more of an ideal gate, a horse that has been the definition of consistency. I mean, you look and every single effort is pretty much first or second with a mid-80 buyer. So I just think she's the safest bet in this race and a deserved favorite. Now going into the 5, for me, the main reason I put this one in second is, again, I understand we all just touched on how everything went perfect for Sense of Success last time out, but nonetheless, this is a horse that has been improving, has kind of been consistently in those high 70s and then was able to move up to an 85. And again, I just think for this one, who also was off that long layoff last time, ran in the same race as the 4 horse, I just still think, I don't think she'll maybe run back to that effort or get the exact same of opportunity, but I still, as they were saying in the chat, still got a decent gate this time as well, though. I do think she would be the only other one that really has shown anything to me, since so many of these have run against each other, that could beat the 4, but at the very least, a similar effort could definitely get second here.
Yeah, and, actually none of us have the 5 anywhere, I don't think. None of us do. I just think it's, Patrick, I can let you touch on, and then we can move on to the 7 who you have in second. Who I thought was actually really interesting in this spot. It just almost seems like first time off the layoff, this horse got a perfect trip, has never run that type of buyer before. First time out at 6 years old, she shows that. For me, it's almost that I have to see it again. I mean, she's been beaten by Midnight Current 4 4 times or 5 times, 6 times in a row, excuse me, and now comes back to that and beats her by 4 1/4. It almost just seems like, what happened? What if the horse wasn't 3 wide the whole way? That type of thing. And if they are as close as they are at the morning lines show, I would much more rather have the 4 than the 5.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And this horse is 5-2 right now. Look at the odds at the horse.
Yeah.
The last 2 times out. I mean, listen, the horse won. You got to give the horse credit, but the way she won was just tremendously easier than what the 4 had to deal with. And Noah hit it on the head with the layoff too. So I think the 4, in the money in all 13 tries at Canterbury, that's incredible. And then
with
so
9
we could talk
as well.
Yeah, 9 wins too. Yeah. And then we could talk about the 7 Thunder's Rock and Roll, who I think is interesting because she's really confident on the lead.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, I'll pull up the time form, go for it, because time form doesn't really have that big of a big pace scenario here. And that's set in the 7. It looks to be out in front, at least by herself, based on time form's perspective.
Yeah, and you wonder if going the mile might be a problem, but you can look back. There's a couple races in there where fits in that spot. The Minnesota Oaks.
Yeah.
Wired the field, won by 9 lengths. So I think this horse could be interesting too, especially trying to play underneath. And then I know you like the 3 a little bit because you have that horse in second.
Yeah, and like I said, the 7, it's kind of the horse. I mean, her best buyer is by far on the turf. That was at Canterbury last year, August 5th. Then she ran 7 days later in the Minnesota Oaks and won for fun in that race too. So I think if she's alone on the lead, I think you definitely have to give a look for her. But it's just a matter of, does someone come up the inside and pace and pressure her on the pace? If so, I'd be much more inclined to pick someone else. Although in her last around this level at Prairie Meadows, granted on the dirt, but took pace pressure a lot. Actually, both times in the last 2 took pace pressure. One, she was able to win against a little bit lesser Minnesota bred competition, and an open company just ended up losing at 11-1. So definitely one to keep in mind to play at least underneath in your exactas. But yeah, I mean, me and you both have the 3. That last race was the eye opener. It's that same type of thing where we talked about it with the 4 and the 5, how all this, or the 5, excuse me, how this number, the 80 though, to me doesn't really come out of nowhere per se. I mean, she ran in 74, 76, kind of a natural progression, at least off of a layoff. But now she finally got a pace setup. It was the first really pace setup she's gotten since last year at Canterbury. You could see a lot of blue coded numbers in there as well. And one, she kind of flew up for second, just missing in a 25 second second quarter. So it's not necessarily coming out of nowhere like that 85 is. I think the 3 makes a ton of sense in this race, especially, but with the pace scenario, I'm not too sure about her, although she has closed into colder paces before, as I said. So definitely at least worth a look underneath in your exactas and trifectas. Noah, last horse we'll touch on, then we'll move on. Big Bad Diva, you have this horse in 3rd. Last race, again, ran a comparable race to a lot of these in that same race that we touched on. You kind of sensing a troubled angle, or what are you sensing with the number 2 Big Bad Diva?
Well, I just like the kind of the way that she's run, not necessarily last time, but 2 back off the claim for Matt Williams. She won nicely. And then, last time that was her first start on the turf. So I'm willing to excuse that a little bit. I think second time on the surface, she's going to improve quite a bit. I mean, that 75, that's based on buyers, that's one of the best races she's run in her career. Yeah. So I think she's going to take the turf, especially the firm turf, second time. Just another angle that I was looking, and another set of connections that do very well here. But I think as a race in general, it's, even though the 4 and the 5, we wouldn't be surprised if it was one of those 2 that won. Yeah, I think they're a little hard to trust in their own way. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can go.
I don't disagree with you by any means. Obviously, we're all going with the 4, but there's a lot of different ones. Horses we have underneath. I'm going 4-3-7. Pat's going 4-7-3. Charlie's going 4-5-7. Noah's going 4-7-2. Guys, we skip race 4 and go on to race 5. That is the next stakes race on the card. It is another $40,000 handicap race. It is the Dark Star Turf Sprint handicap, going 5 furlongs on the turf. And as I bring up the Equibase right now, you guys will notice a couple very familiar faces in the turf sprint, or as I like to call it, the Smoke and J division. Race 5, like I said, field of 10. The morning line favorite all the way to the inside, the number 1. Arrest Me Red for Wesley Ward, bringing him over here. Bad Beat Brian, your second choice, the number 10. Chris Amy and Brittany Vandenberg, two obviously very good Chicago-based rider and trainer alike at 4-1. And third choice, the Minnesota-bred Canterbury legend, the Alligator Hunter, for Alonso Quinones and Tim Padilla. And guys, as you see, as I switch on the bottom of the screen, you see two of us are going with Arrest Me Red. That is Noah and myself. Patrick's going with number 2, Jack's Outlawed, a little bit of a price of 5-1. And Charlie's going with the number 10, Bad Beat Brian. Pat, I'll let you talk first, because actually it wasn't even a horse we mentioned there. I know you have some very good feelings about this horse. So what'd you like most about the number 2, Jack's Outlaw?
Yeah, first off, has Smoke and Jay beaten anybody in this field? Jay lost to both Arrest Me Red and Bad Beat Brian by, I think, 1 length or 1.5 lengths or something like that. Gotcha. Okay.
But either way,
it just made me think. It made me, definitely. It made me think for a second. I'm like, oh, hey. No, listen, I think Jack's Outlaw, he's kind of gotten better as the age has gone on. I mean, just look at the buyers. And, this horse last 2 times has been, run really well. I mean, against, you look at the fields. I looked at a couple of the horses he faced last out when he was a favorite at 2-1, and they weren't very good. But I think this horse should sit a good trip. I know you prefer speed in turf sprints. This horse can be forwardly placed, but does not need to lead, like I said. And I think at 5-1 with other horses in here who, like Arrest Me Red, I know you guys are going to talk about, but listen, this horse, runs in a grade 1 or grade 2, comes out of it, and more times than not throws a dud. Now, hits the board maybe, sure, has done that in the past, but I'm just not sure I could back the horse in that spot. And I think, with the connections in here who have been, the jockey and the trainer have been pretty good together, I'll give this horse a shot, who seems to be in good form at this time.
Yeah, and I mean, look, 2 in a row, 2 very convincing wins in a row. Obviously, going to have to take a little bit of a step up to beat some of these horses in here, but at a nice price, that's one you're willing to take. Like you said, maybe you're not willing to trust horses that are going to be in that 9-5, 2-1 range, and there's definitely 2 of them that are going to be there. So I think you'll definitely get the 5-1 on Jack's Outlaw, and if he's can continue that form, he's 4-4 at Canterbury in the money, so at least one to consider underneath, if not on top, like Pat has. Noah, you have this horse in second. I'll get to you in a sec, but then Charlie, we'll talk about Bad Beat Brian first, as you have this horse on top. 4-1, hasn't really been able to show good form, but again, coming out of very hard races in a lot of them. Obviously, the turf sprint on Derby Day, the Shaker Town at Keeneland. Now, this is definitely a little bit easier spot, but is going to have to get back to that form last year, I think, if he wants to have a say, at least on the win end in this race.
Yeah, I mean, look, certainly if you look at Bad Beat Brian and Arrest Me Red, you're kind of realizing it's the end of the line. They're 2 older horses, especially when it comes to experience. So Bad Beat Brian, who's ran over 40 times now, with Arlington legend, one of my favorite jockeys, Chris Amy, who knows this horse very well. I mean, look, to see these 2 horses go from grade 2s to this is obviously, sad to have to see happen. But at the same time, I think you can make an argument that, these top 2 horses between the 1 and the 10 in theory should show down, because they're running against horses that are coming out of, $20,000, $30,000 optional claimings and have never seen a grade 2 and won't sniff one. So in my opinion, it should come down to those 2. My big issue is I know a lot of people are probably stunned that I didn't go with the Wesley Ward horse, and, Arrest Me Red's working fine. It's just, I don't know if the horse has it anymore. And I don't know if this is too short for Arrest Me Red. I think honestly the horse needs more distance. So I went with Bad Beat Brian just because I do think the 5 furlongs is what this horse wants. I think 2 back, being in a grade 2 is just past what this horse is capable of. And I think, quite honestly, the 5.5 is too far at this point. I think this horse needs 5 furlongs. Didn't run badly last time. I just think couldn't stay quite close enough, but, lost by 3 lengths. It was a decent rebound after that disaster in the turf sprint. It was still working forwardly. So at least from the works, the horse still has it. And I'm just willing to trust that, this is the savvy veteran who's gotten it done in spots before at big prices. I think is in a more than reasonable and massive, class relief here. I don't know. I think the savvy veteran with Chris Amy can get it done here.
No, I don't know about you. I actually thought the exact opposite of what Charlie just said. Yeah. I thought that Bad Beat Brian needs a little longer because he was able to get there, just lose by 3 at the Mighty Bow. His last win was 6 furlongs at Kentucky, or his last good race, at least good placing, was Kentucky Downs at 6 furlongs. We don't know how that plays. Arrest Me Red. I mean, he's been running. Charlie's got a point that he's been running at 6 and 5.5 a lot, but I mean, at 6 furlongs at Turfway Park, run very easily against Outdoor and Smoke and Jay, who both came back to run really nice buyers in their next race. Outdoor came back to win a stake or an optional claiming at Churchill with a 93, and Smoke and Jay came back to win on the front end at Indiana and an N3X. So, Arrest Me Red still seems to be in form at this point. Again, Wesley put him in the turf sprint. Had a lot of confidence in him, was obviously well backed as all Wesley horses usually are, but losing to Cogburn, maybe is what the horse is past capable of. But like Charlie said with Bad Beat Brian, this is a tremendous class relief. And if he sits the trip that I think he will, I think he's going to have a huge chance in this race. And I'll bring up the Equibase or the time for him right now. See, it has designated fast pace, and Arrest Me Red's going to set a nice stalking trip.
Yeah, I think I would be a little bit more worried if Arrest Me Red had kind of put together back-to-back clunkers. I'm not really ready to give up on him yet. Maybe the 5 is a little too short for him, but he's just classy as hell. I know there's a couple of horses, quite a few actually, that I kind of liked second time that kind of didn't take to that Churchill turf, and I'm just hoping that this might be one of them. I actually almost did put the 2 Jack's Outlaw on top for Patrick's sake. It just kind of seems like the 1 and the 10 are a little kind of moving backwards in their career.
Yep, that's correct.
And the 2, even though he's 7, he's just kind of on the up and up. And that race last time was whoa. I mean, I was very impressed, and I'd be willing to back him again. But it's just a matter of whether the 1 and the 10 are classy enough to get it done in a spot.
I mean,
like this.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's the beauty of the handicapping puzzle, right? Is you're trying to figure out these horses that are coming from what seems to be way better competition than a horse like Jack's Outlaw, who's running in 20K. But if they're both, regressing and this horse is just starting to get good, obviously with the 83, 84 best this horse has ever run, this horse is going to get a very similar trip to both Arrest Me Red and Bad Beat Brian. And if he can continue to show that type of, he's going to have to improve at least on the numbers a little bit. But if he can continue to keep on the up and up, as you guys say, Jack's Outlaw is definitely going to be fighting for the lead. Last horse we'll bring up, guys, is you got to mention the Minnesota bred legend, the Alligator Hunter, in this race, both on dirt and turf. This horse has been absolutely fantastic. He is going to be a part of the pace scenario, and that's the only thing I don't like about him too much. But he has stalked off the pace before. But like I said, on dirt, on turf, it really does not matter for the Alligator Hunter. He's ran very good at 5, very good at 6, very good at 7.5. I mean, he can do it all, really. This horse is 12 for 30 in his lifetime. Definitely not one I would back on the win end per se, but I think it's one you're going to have to include underneath. And being that this horse is as known and as good as he is, I think the Alligator Hunter is definitely going to be backed pretty well. But looks, again, just being close to that pace scenario and being that, he definitely does his best running on the front end. If he doesn't get there, I'd definitely be willing to back horses like Arrest Me Red, even Jack's Outlaw, more than I would willing to trust the Alligator Hunter. But for me, you can never leave the Alligator Hunter out of a bet. Definitely at this type of race at Canterbury Park. I'm going 1-6-10. Pat's going 2-1-6. Charlie's going 10-1-6, and Noah's going 1-2-1. to 10. Guys, let's move on to race number 6, and that is the Brooks Fields Mile, going, of course, a mile on the turf for 3-year-olds and up. It's the male version of the race we talked about earlier. Draws a field of 9, technically, with 1 MTO. That's the number 9, Unified Dreams. The morning line favorite, though, is the number 8, Golden Bandit, although coming off a very, very quick turnaround for Luis Fuentes and Cody Rosin. Second choice, the number 4, Silent Poet, the Ontario bred Eduardo Gallardo for I think it's Tanner Tracy. I'm losing it with these names today. I can't keep track of it. I believe it's Tanner Tracy, though. And then the third choice being the number 2, Kennebec, coming Maryland bred, but coming over from Turf Paradise for Brian Pena and Silva. So let's move into our picks right now, guys, and you'll see this is where we start to branch off a little bit. Both Patrick and I are going with number 5. That's Not Funny, the Minnesota bred, for Cody Rosin and Luis Quinones, but Charlie is going with the number 10, Tonka Warrior, and Noah's going with the morning line favorite, the number 8, Gold Bandit. So Noah, I'll let you go for it first. Like I said, a very quick turnaround for Golden Bandit, but a very, very impressive performance last time out at Canterbury.
Yeah, I just, he's coming back quick, but I just think that last effort is kind of hard to ignore. I don't think that field was very good, so I'm kind of hoping that even though he won by 7 1/4, he didn't really have to do much to beat a field like that. This is actually one that I mentioned earlier was on this card last year, and out of that maiden special weight, they ran him in the Canterbury Derby. Actually got bet late and ended up winning. So I feel like if he does get bet, it'll probably be one to look at. I just realized I went 4 chalks in a row, which is very unlike me. But it's very hard to ignore the fact that the trainer, Cody Rosin, is 7 for 12 at the meet, and he got a horse that's 3 for 3 on this turf course. So, easy to back in a difficult race.
Yeah. The only, obviously, like I've been hinting at, the only thing that I didn't like is the fact that he's coming back. He's going to be coming back in 9 days. I mean, he's done it. He's done 2 weeks before, and that was when he ended up winning the Canterbury Derby. So Rosin has done this type of move with Golden Bandit before, but it is going to be a pretty fast turnaround. So, obviously, like you said, I mean, 7 for 12 is kind of ridiculous. And like I said, you kind of got to go the 1 for 10 days because it doesn't take it into account. But look at that, Noah. There you go. 9 for 34, 26% off of 1 to 10 days for Cody Rosin off of layoff. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind. Horse should be ready. And if he is ready, runs back to the 89, definitely could be hard to beat in this one. Charlie, we'll go to you next. The number 10, Tonka Warrior. And this is the race I'm going to show because That's Not Funny and Drama Chorus are going to be coming out of this race. That's Not Funny is the 5, who Patrick and I both have on top. And Drama Chorus is, the 3 in this race. And Charlie, I'll let you talk through it. I'll play it from the top of the stretch again, or the top of the turn again on this race. And you'll see Drama Chorus, the 2 first here. And then Tonka Warrior is, I believe, the 10 in this race. And
I think the 7. The 7.
No,
The
10 is Tonka Warrior,
7
and
in
the
this
10's
race,
That's Not Funny. The 10 and the 7 is what we're looking for.
Yeah, so what I just kind of keyed in on, and you'll see eventually in the stretch, is the 10 was the 7 in this race, the 10 that I chose, Tonka Warrior, was just being really funky in the stretch. You'll see right there, like the jockey is desperately trying to get him to focus up, and he just can't go in a straight line. He's having to keep moving him out. He was fighting the horse a lot and still ended up rallying late and, just missed. So for me, I just think, now getting that second race off the layoff, I think will be a lot more ready to go. And also there's just a lot of speed in this race. I think it could set up really nicely. If you look at the back numbers, I mean, this horse had a 91 in Oaklawn Park, an 84 at Canterbury, an 88 at Oaklawn Park, an 84 at Hawthorne. Has kind of been able to do it everywhere and is a very consistent horse. I mean, you look in 18 efforts, has 5 wins, 4 seconds, and 4 thirds. So you know that he's going to run his race and be game. And I just think in a race like this, if he can break a little bit better, if he can stay more steady in the stretch and go straighter, I know we got set up with a hot pace. But again, looking at this race, I don't see how there isn't, again, a hot pace for him to run into. And I think we can all kind of agree, and, our viewers can see with our picks, this is probably the most wide open race in the sequence by a comfortable margin. So I thought if there was ever a race for me to kind of try to beat the favorite and go with a bit of a price, I just think Tonka Warrior is very live in the spot. And also, got bet all the way down to 4-1 off a big layoff.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I have this horse second, so does Noah. So if he kind of figures out the little bit of the greenness that he had, that was just really weird. It didn't seem like either like the turf course that day or whatever happened. It was super weird for him, but that's not funny is, of course, the horse that Patrick and I both have on top. We talked about it last race. Again, off the layoff, off the trainer switch to Cody Rosine from Joel Burnt, who we talked about earlier with Midnight Current. Patrick, this horse is just off the layoff to seem that professional, sit a really nice trip and be able to fly home like that late. That was definitely exactly what I wanted to see. And now in a race, I'll show the time for him in a race that looks to have that same type of setup. I would love That's Not Funny at 6-1.
Yeah, 100%. And usually, horses like this, that are 13-1 or, pretty big price, I usually don't like to bet on or put on top. But, there were circumstances here, like you said, the layoff, and that was ultra impressive. Had a little pace to run into, but, going a mile, there is going to always be a little bit of pace considering it's not that far of a distance or a longer turf distance race. And I just think, like you showed the time form, this horse should sit a perfect trip. This horse, has been well meant. Has won almost half the time at Canterbury. It's been in the money quite often. This is, like Charlie said, a wide open race, and you got to look for a little price here or there. But I would not be surprised if this horse gets bet down even more come post time.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of different horses that could be bet. I don't know. Golden Bandit should be the favorite, but again, off that quick turnaround, I don't know how many people are going to see, obviously those stats I just showed on Cody Rosine. So Golden Bandit should be the favorite, but between Tonka Warrior, That's Not Funny, Silent Poet, even Drama Chorus could be one up there as well. You can see a lot of odd shifting. So keep an eye on the tote board for this one. I'll talk quick. Drama Chorus is one, like I said, I showed the time form. They have Drama Chorus out in front by a little margin to the 8 Golden Bandit. I'm assuming they will be taking. They will be 1-2. They won't be I don't think the 3 will be ahead of the 8 based on that last race from the 8 and what he ended up doing in that one. I think they're going to be head and head. And if that pressure does take out those 2, I think that sets it up for both the 5 and the 10, who we both have, who all of us have at least somewhere. So Drama Course is one that if he does end up getting to the inside and getting clear, I think definitely has to be one that you have to consider. But it's completely base pace scenario wise for this one. If he ends up going 22 again, he only ended up losing by 2, which is something that I actually really like to see in a horse. Granted, got a 24-second breather in the second quarter mile, but still very consistent horse. This horse has run low 90s before last year at Tampa Bay. Granted, he is 7 now, could be starting to lose a little bit of the edge, but definitely one I at least consider keeping in my exactas and trifectas underneath, as he loves to fight. And if he does take pace pressure, he won't just completely cave like some horses will. Like I said, the last couple too that we'll talk about, Kennebec is a horse that actually everyone else has anywhere. You could see I was a little bit in between who I wanted to pick for third between the 2, the 3, and the 8. Ended up going with Drama Course. But Kennebec, guys, coming over from Turf Paradise, has run anywhere from a mile to basically 2 miles in these last 3 races. Ran from a mile to a mile and 3/8, and then a mile and 7/8, and has won them all. A very interesting and very versatile horse now coming over to Canterbury Park for this one. Pat, I'll let you talk first just because you have this horse in second, and then Charlie and Noah, feel free to add on anything that he doesn't touch on.
Yeah, my take on this horse is come from the clouds and hope the pace melts down.
Yep.
Listen, this horse has won at a mile, so it's not like, it's going to be like, oh, geez, what's going on here? So, but I just think you look at the last 3 races, obviously the horse has won, but has kind of found a knack for the wire. So that's what I think is going to have to happen in this spot. in those races, I mean, the horse has been almost even money in the last, or has been pretty much even money in the last 6 races, and more times than not has won at the wire by a nose. I mean, I would never bet a favorite. That would be kind of hard to bet a favorite at even money and hope and beat Nax at the wire. But what would you guys, anything else on the 2 in this spot?
I mean, no, I'll let you go first because it's West Coast based.
Yeah, I liked Kennebec just because I think the bettors out there might pay too much attention to the last 2 and say, oh, this horse wants to go longer, when in reality, I think the mile is, perfect for a horse like this. Has done it on the turf, has done it on the synth or Golden Gate. In that mile and 7/8 race, 3rd place finisher actually came back and ran in the San Juan last weekend at Santa Anita and ran a decent 3rd. That was a pretty good field. D'Amato had a horse coming from overseas that actually shipped over and won that race. So if you're kind of looking for, what do they call it? Strength of schedule. I thought that race was pretty good, but I think, you're going to get a decent price, at least here. Probably just about on anybody in a difficult race like this.
Yeah, and basing, kind of talking about what Noah was already saying. Number one, I think as we were talking about horses that will take money, I'd expect the 5 and the 10 will not be those odds. I think they'll both probably be. I think the 10 will probably be maybe, 4 or 5 to 1, and I think the 5 will probably closer to 3, 4 to 1. I think this 2 is going to be one that floats up a little bit. I think, like Noah said, people are going to key in on the longer distance, all the synthetic races. I think this is going to be one that naturally floats up, maybe 5 to 1, but could float up to 6 or 7 to 1. And yeah, I know the pace just showed it's a normal pace or whatever, and that it would be 3 and 8 on the lead. I personally just disagree with it. I don't see how this doesn't end up being a hot pace. Now, I think what Pat talked on is what I was going to key in as well. Is this is one who's been able to just barely get to the wire. And for me, I think the problem is not that the mile's an issue. I just think that I don't think the 2. I think the luck's going to kind of run out now. I don't think the 2 will get to that wire in time. I certainly think this is one that will be flying late and can close. I just think the 5 and 10 will probably get the jump, and I think the 8's good enough to at least hold up. But I think this is certainly one that could finish underneath.
Yeah, and like I said, obviously a very wide open race based on what we've talked about. But there's a lot of horses that are running mid pack. Then you have horses that are coming from the clouds that definitely could come in, in that exact or trifecta range. And then you have horses like Golden Bandit that are coming off a 9-day layoff that you have some questions on. This is a very good race, and there's a lot of
questions. Yeah,
a lot of question marks for a lot of these horses. So definitely a good betting race above all else. For sure. I'm going 5-10-3. Pat's going 5-2-8. Charlie's going 10-8-2. And Noah's going 8-10-2. Guys, let's move on to the last race. And it is the feature on the card. It is the $50,000 Canterbury Derby going 1 mile on the Canterbury turf course. Draws a field of 7. And as you'll see right now, the overseas shipper for Wesley Ward is your 9-5 favorite, Navy Seal, coming out of Group 1 and Group 2 races over in England and Ireland. Second choice is the Canterbury-based horse Illustrator, who's been running very well in his own right. Actually, no, sorry, Texas-based horse. Excuse me, I'm thinking of a different one. He's coming from Sam Houston and Lone Star Park at 5-2, and then third choice being the number 2 Bourbon Aficionado, the Maryland bred for Carmona and Robertson. Guys, let's bring up the picks right now for the Canterbury Derby. And you'll see 3 of us are going with the shipper Navy Seal, but there's one person that is going against and is going with the second choice. Against the chalk, 5-2. Noah's going with the number 6 Illustrator. Noah, you have the floor, of course, my friend, to tell us why we're all wrong and why you are right. What'd you like most about the number 6 Illustrator?
Yeah, I'm going with the states-based horse. I just think he's getting good at the right time. If you look at his races from this year as a 3-year-old, he ran in that Texas Turf Mile, which actually came back as a pretty nice race. Neat actually came back and won at Keeneland. Then Committee of One was a horse that was actually bumping heads with Shards at one point. Then the second race in March wins nicely. Then last time at Lone Star, ran a really nice race, was a favorite in that race. I just think, for small connections like this, I think it takes a lot of confidence to ship a horse, up north to a spot like this. And Luis Quinones was actually on him earlier in his career. So I think Luis is familiar with him. It's probably between the 1 or the 6. I've just got some questions about the one, and I think might get a little over bet. I'm a little worried about the. It's warm here this time of year, and this horse is when he ran on the turf. It's been nothing but soft, heavy ground, so I'm just a little concerned. But he could definitely be talented enough in his.
No, and that's completely fair, and that's the one thing I was actually going to bring up. I watched the two races, the Group 2 and the Group 1. I mean, look, there's no group, like, I'm not going to sure there's no Group 1, Group 2 company in here. Like, that's just at the base level of it. There's you're not going to find those types of horses. You're not going to find a Forever Young in this race, at least what it looks like on paper. But in a lot of these races, Pat, I mean, he's been forwardly placed. I mean, in the Criterium International at St. Cloud, he was forward in that race. He was actually on the lead coming for home and just ended up giving it up a little bit towards the end, while and there was a lot of soft ground implications. There was the rail was the place to be that day, and yada yada yada. But he's been forwardly placed, and as I go to the time form, I mean, they projected no speed at all. So if the one has any of that speed that he's shown before, that's what I like most about Navy SEAL.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the instructions are going to have to be with. I think the horse has to be forward, like you said, and I don't know if any horses are going to be able to pass this horse. I think talent-wise, it's obviously there. That's not really saying much. Yep. But I just, Noah tried to make a case for the 6, and I get it. I looked at the 6 intently. I love the improving part of it, but I can't get by the fact that the one's going to get the inside draw and should be forward and should just, sit its own trip. And honestly doesn't even have to be on the lead. I mean, this horse is just very well meant. I mean, I know Charlie would like to say more about his Wesley Ward contingent as he's across the pond, as they
and and Raymond actually brings up Navy SEAL's carrying 116 versus everyone else in this race. There's a lot of horses carrying 118 and 120. So good point, Raymond. Thanks for putting that in the chat. Charlie, again, you have the floor, and we all know how Wesley likes to run his horses, and this one being forwardly placed again might be the key.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I think this horse could honestly end up going off at even money, 4 to 5, 3 to 5. I think this one's going to get destroyed on the board. My only knock or concern on Navy SEAL would just be, why does Wesley have the horse in this race? This is one, as we touched on, ran against Forever Young, ran in some grade 2s and grade 1s and got bet down, went off as the favorite in a grade 2 and ran a decent 4th. I also, watched those replays, and I think this is one that could just naturally inherit the lead, or at the very least will be close enough to just go on by. That's honestly my only question on Navy SEAL, is just why did Wesley drop this? Like, in my opinion, I know, like, it's not actually, oh, this is a horse up for claim, but this to me feels like a massive, massive, massive class drop. So that would be my only concern, is why do you have this horse running against this level of competition? But I think in theory, if he's anywhere near as good as he's been overseas, I think this horse should win by 6, 8, 10 lengths. I mean, this field, if we're just being blunt, isn't there. I'll say it.
No, he said it. He said it.
To me, I mean, if you're looking around this field, you're seeing plenty of horses with buyers ranging from the 50s to low 80s. Like, if we're talking about those kind of horses to a horse that they threw in, in the UAE Derby and ran against Forever Young, that is how it should be. I know this horse isn't Forever Young, but I'm just saying, if this horse has any ability and is running in a race where there's no pace, and in theory, again, should either be able to walk the
Forever
dog.
Young.
I just said no. I didn't like the news on Forever Young. I had Forever Young as a horse to use defensively. I'm not going to dispute that.
When we drafted him in the Kentucky Derby pool, and we were told we were coming in last. Yeah, that's right.
That's just because you were Team Japan, because we all thought that the other Japanese horses would hold.
Both Japanese horses came second,
third, and fifth.
If only we did the Belmont. If only we did the Belmont draft, they would have loved that with Dornock.
Oh yeah, no kidding. No shit.
Hey, I in reality, I should have said something about Dornock. I told Noah that was my sneaky pick.
Hey, but, Kyle, I'm kind of interested in something myself. Is there a way that you could look up Wesley Ward 2 turns on the turf for the last 5 years? Because when you think of Wesley Ward, you don't necessarily think of him as a 2-turn trainer.
Right. And the one thing I wanted to point out, Noah, is that look at these. I mean, he's technically slower than a lot of these horses. I mean, Illustrators, the highest time form number at 102. And you're talking about comparing figures, especially buyers obviously not being written overseas. They have him at a 97 top, and it's not even in either of those races. Even he was 2-1 in a Group 2, and he technically has a slower number. But obviously, competition matters in that regard as well. Just something to point out. But yeah, absolutely, we can take a look at that. We can take a look at turf routes, if this thing will cooperate with me, in the last
I do
5
know
years. There you go.
Yeah.
There's
He had
your
one that
24
ran
for
pretty big, though,
206.
He had one that ran big, though, that we covered or I don't know if we covered it, but it was in one of the Cali races where he had those two horses go over. It was I can't think of their names right now, but it was
He had two of them. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so I guess at least we saw in that race when he had his two horses going distance. One of them ran huge for second, I think, it was second or third. Here. But that's fantastic. And that was the horse. But to just wrap up what I was saying, I just think this horse is run against much better. I think Wesley has put him in a very comfortable spot. I obviously take Noah's points about the surface being a question, and obviously this isn't Wesley's specialty by any means. But again, if we're just looking, and as Patrick was saying, though, this horse is very well meant. This horse will be bet accordingly. It would be very shocking to me if Navy Seal doesn't get it done.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, it's completely base pace scenario wise. If this horse, like you, Charlie, said, has been good and he's going to be up front, I'd much rather have Navy Seal up front comparatively. But no, I completely agree with you. I think you said it that this horse might be 1-to-1, 4-to-5 at post time. I think maybe not that low, but I think him and Illustrator are going to be pretty separated from the rest of the field in terms of odds. I mean, like I said, I have Hold Your Applause in second, actually. That last race was just very good off the trainer switch at a mile, closing into a pretty slow pace, going a minute 12 for 3/4. I just thought that was very impressive and obviously well backed in that race. Going to need to take a little bit of a step up in this race. But the 76 buyer makes a lot of sense in this field. Like I said, we're all kind of the same. Patrick, you have Friesen, which the last horse we'll talk about. Then we'll move into and then we'll move into best bets. But Esteban Martinez, Luis Fuentes picks up this, who's winning at 28%, picks up the mount, which obviously has got to be a good sign. This one's just going to have to take the turf. I mean, that's as simple as that.
Yeah, sometimes I always like to look for that, dirt to turf and see if I can find something in there. And I think this horse, underneath could be something improving in every start. Was not bet too well last time, but came on and ran pretty well late against horses that weren't too bad. Listen, this is obviously a huge step up in class, but I'll try and find this horse, underneath if I'm playing, some tries and stuff with Navy Seal on top.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you by any means. Obviously, like you said, going to have to improve, but has done it on the dirt and is just going to have to bring it to the turf as well. I'm going 1-3-6. Pat's going 1-6-4. Charlie's going 1-6-3, and Noah's going 6-3-1. Guys, moving on to best bets here, and the first person that I have on the block is Patrick. So, Pat, as we kind of hinted at before, race 5, a win on number 2, Jack's Outlaw, and then race number 6, starting a double, 2-5, and then singling Navy Seal. Pat, talk about your best bets.
Yeah, I do have a win bet on a horse in a turf sprint. Go ahead, Charlie.
No! I'm laughing because Noah got.
He's just laughing because Jim's clowning me.
Yeah. No, it's not you, Pat.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I saw the chat before. No, it's all good. Jack's Outlaw. Listen, I honestly think this horse, I know the horse is 7 years old, but this horse is, in great form, and I think should sit a great trip and should get a good price on the horse. So, hey, take a shot with that horse trying to beat Arrest Me Red. And then in the 6th race into the 7th, I'm going to play a double, two medium prices into Navy Seal. Should get a decent return on that if that can come, if the 2 of the 5 can come in with Navy Seal. This is a fun sequence. Canterbury is always fun, has a good turf course. Little Saturday night betting. Nothing wrong with that.
Just back-to-back weeks we're covering Saturday night around here. We covered Saturday night last week at Churchill, and now we're doing Saturday night here at Canterbury. And Pat, just for the record, the 2 is number 2 in race 6 is Kennebec, and the number 5 is That's Not Funny, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just like I said, just making sure that for those that are listening on audio, 2-5 into 1 starting in race number 6. Pat, good luck with your best bets on Saturday. Charlie, you are next, going 2 exactas, two exactas with the number 1 on top. In race number 2, 1 over 2-8. That's Retired Kathy over Tour Queen and Extreme Smoke Show, as we talked about in the first race we covered. and then all the way to the last race we covered, going Navy SEAL on top over Hold Your Applause and Illustrator.
Yeah, something I kind of have been starting to do on my own betting that I decided I want to kind of bring to the show since I've been doing it anyway is sometimes, if you don't feel so good necessarily about a double, but there is a horse that you feel strong about on top nonetheless, the angle I've been trying to do more and more is pick a horse or two, or, if the odds are big enough, three, that I just want to play underneath an exactas and Dutch them the same way you would Dutch a double. And for me, we all had the one on top in race 2 and retired Kathy, and I do think that a horse really should get it done in that spot. I think the setup will be perfect with the pace. And then, as I touched on, I think Extreme Smoke Show has a bunch of talent, certainly as the class. The question is the surface. And then Tour Queen is the other one that, is supposed to take money. I think there's a few more question marks on that horse, but those are my two horses underneath. And then obviously I talked about how I think Navy SEAL should romp this field. And then, I think Hold Your Applause can be one that could be, rolling late. I think the question is obviously going to be the pace. But as you touched on, Kyle, the horse has dealt with cold paces before and has been able to make up strong ground. And then Noah, talked a lot about what he likes about Illustrator, who's ran against some decent competition. So those were the two that kind of stuck out to me for who could finish behind Navy SEAL in the other race that's going on within that race.
No, obviously I completely agree with both your top picks. So good luck with those exactas on Saturday. Noah, you are next, going two bets, an exacta and a double. Exacta 1/3 in race number 2. That's of course singling retired Kathy, as we've talked about, over Barb's Dream Come True, which again, same top pick, different underneath horse than Charlie. And then race number 6, starting a double, going 8-10. That of course being Golden Bandit and Tonka Warrior.
I love that.
Into Illustrator. So hoping to get a little bit of value, not taking the favorite in race number 7.
Yeah, same in race 2, same top 2 as you, my friend. Seems like retired Kathy is probably very likely in that spot. So it just makes sense to try to, from a value perspective, you could probably do that 1-4 double. But knowing Kyle, he's probably going to hammer that. And you're not going to get any value. So I'm going to go with the 1-3 exacta instead. And then fast forward to the second to last race that we covered, race 6. 8 and the 10 were my two top picks. I had the 2 in there as well. You could probably use a couple more. It's a very difficult race. But for the sake of this bet, I'm going to go with those 2. And then if that one for Ward gets bet more than he should, then I'm going to get, a nice payout in the double. It seems like a race where you either pick one or the other. So I'm going to try and go with the 6 and see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's that. See, with race 6, I guess that's the thing, right? Is a lot of times with these sequences, I feel like you have to include race 6 in a type of best bet because it just increases so much. It creates so much value having so many horses close to each other. Where, like I said, you're instead getting 4-1 on 1 or 2 doubles. You're then getting 7-8-1 on 4 or 5 doubles, and you can pick which ones you like, of course, the most. So I completely agree with you, Noah. Good luck with your best bets. I'm going to actually have the wrong number in there, I believe. So yes, I did. Okay. So sorry, I had to fix something real quick. And again, very astute people on this channel. Jim also said it earlier. He said, I smell a large cold double of 1 and 4 in races 2 and 3 as someone's best bet. And Jim, you would be exactly correct. I think it's going to pay 4.5 to 1, Charlie, and I'll take my $125 and shove it, where. Anyway, I think retired Kathy, we all touched on it, guys. I mean, makes the most amount of sense. Going to sit a really nice trip. Should end up winning as long as she gets a clean trip in that race. And like I said, and with Midnight Current, wide last time, second off the layoff, should return to good form. Hopefully, like I said, 4 to 5. Hey, don't worry about it, Jim. I'm like I said, I'll take my 3.5 to 1, 4 to 1, and I'll take my $100 and I'll probably go put it in at something else on Saturday. But either way, it builds the bankroll, Jim. That's all that matters, at least hopefully. And in race number 5, I'm taking a single on Arrest Me Red, being the fact that he is so classy, getting that class drop. This is the second Wesley horse, but the first to run on Saturday. I think from a perspective, I feel more confident in backing Arrest Me Red than I do Navy SEAL. So I might end up biting the bullet for that one, but Arrest Me Red singled into the 5 and the 10, those being my top pick in race number 6, which was That's Not Funny, and then number 10, Tonka Warrior as well, hoping to cash in on a little bit of that value in the 6th race. But guys, thank you guys all so much for joining. This has been episode 87 of Bettin N Boozin, covering all stakes at Canterbury. And again, we've had again, even when we do these small tracks, obviously we could cover Churchill, we could cover Aqueduct every single week, and we probably get, a good amount of viewership every single week. But when these small tracks have these bigger days, I feel like it's great to back these types of tracks. And, like I said, Churchill, obviously, they have a ton of money. These small tracks, they don't have the most amount of backing. And when they have these big days, it's always fun to play, especially when they have good cards like this with these 5 stakes races, even though people say, oh, 50,000, that's not that much. They're just, all the money's the same. 2-1 pays 2-1, 3-1 pays 3-1, no matter where you go. And if you can support a small track while doing it, that of course is a great thing to do. And as you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen right now, speaking of supporting small tracks, Picks and Ponies episode 356, I believe is what it is. Yeah, 356, covering Thistledown's Ohio Derby Day on this Saturday as well. 2 small tracks getting the spotlight here on the HHH Racing Podcast. So tune in tomorrow night. That's Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for that one. But to all the people watching and to all the people watching on a replay, thank you guys all so much for watching. We greatly appreciate it. For my co-hosts, Patrick Kunsel, Charlie Freeman, and Noah Maher, this has been your host, Kyle Roscoe, in episode 87 of Bettin N Boozin here on the HHH Racing Podcast, covering all stakes for Saturday at Canterbury Park for Canterbury Derby Day. And until next time, everyone, crush those bets, win those photos, and stay safe, everyone. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good night.